We've just heard the Minister of Finance table his budget for 2011 and 2012, a heavy focus on financing what they see as labour-intensive industries. It's the jobs issue in South Africa. What role can banks play?
Well, I think this is a very exciting time for us as banks. If you look at where we've come from, I think South Africa, we've survived the crisis. I think that the economy is bottoming up quite nicely. I think we're starting to see confidence coming back into the market. Certainly we're seeing consumers coming back into the markets. So when you place the president's address right in the middle of that, he spoke a lot about job creation. So it's exciting for us as banks because now you have a lot of willing stakeholders. You have the government that's really keen to uplift society through job creation. You have a lot of amazing entrepreneurs out there who are hungry for opportunity, who are hungry for financing, who are hungry to be shown how to do business. So I think it's really an exciting time for all of us in South Africa.
Is it an exciting time or a scary time? Because a constituency of the ruling party has often threatened nationalization, not just of the mines, but also of the banks. If banks do not direct lending towards some of these developmental challenges, like sponsoring investment in labor-absorptive industries, the argument often from the Youth League is banks are very quick to finance equity transactions in BEE or mergers and acquisitions. But what you're not doing is directing capital towards those investments that would help to create more jobs. And there's a sense that that is your role.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't really understand or appreciate the significant role that banks play in any society around the world. If you look specifically at what some of our what are some of the things that we're trying to do, we have an enterprise development area, and we're continuing to build that capability. And essentially what the enterprise development area is trying to do is almost mirror what the government is trying to do. In other words, the provision of financing, but even more importantly, it's not just the provision of financing that we need here, it's the provision of skills, it's the provision of all the other peripheral things that budding entrepreneurs require to make themselves sustainable. So I said earlier that I'm very excited about the time that we're in, because I think you're getting alignment between what the government is trying to do and what people like ourselves, banks, are trying to do as well, in mirroring that alignment. So I think we play a massive role in ensuring that a lot of people get access to financing for jobs, but not only that, providing all the other skills that are required.
Well, adding to what you're saying, obviously the minister has tried to inject some capital towards SME development, some money going to Khula enterprises, some money towards a micro financing fund. But the biggest issue for SMEs is that they need consistent financial and technical support all throughout the life cycle of their business, not just the seed capital, but all throughout it. Where can Absa play a role?
Well, Absa plays a role in providing the sustainable finance throughout the project. So we don't just do seed financing. As I said earlier, that we finance sustainable projects, not only in providing the actual cash, but in providing all the skills. For instance, we have something called enterprise development, which is a classroom-based approach. So we literally bring a whole bunch of budding entrepreneurs into a class. We teach them the skills around what makes a business sustainable. We teach them the fundamentals about dealing with the income statement, the balance sheet. We teach them the fundamentals about how to deal with a bank. We teach them fundamentals around how to price their products properly, how to market themselves properly. So I think the role that we play is not really just about providing the financing. It's important for people to understand that what makes a business sustainable in the long term is not just the cash, but is the ability to run the business in a professional way.
Let's move beyond sort of SME support and retail banking and talk about Absa's approach to Africa. It's become exciting for investment opportunities in Africa, and we're seeing banks wanting to acquire other banks in new African markets. There is a feeling that Absa is a little bit cautious when it comes to the rest of Africa. Is that the right sense?
I don't think so, but often when people think about Absa and Africa, I think people in the financial industry often sometimes think about our presence in Tanzania, our presence in Mozambique, but in actual fact, when you think about the footprint, the consolidated footprint that's provided by the entire Barclays Bank and Absa in Africa, it's quite big. I think Barclays has some 11 or 12 footprints out there, and we have 2. So we've got Africa pretty well covered. I think what is required is for us to work more closer together, more in a more aligned fashion
through using their assets
throughout Africa.
So effectively what happens in Africa at the moment, because of the huge investment opportunities in extractive industries, in infrastructure, is the big need for corporate finance, is help in structuring deals, and is help in raising large sums of money for mega projects. What sort of services would Absa be offering? Or rather, let me ask the question, how do you see the corporate finance opportunities in Africa?
You know, Loretta, I think Africa is a phenomenal opportunity. And in the next 10 years, 20 years, you'll have 1 billion people urbanized in Africa. What this means, before we even talk about the sophisticated corporate deals, is what's required actually on the ground from an SME point of view. If we look at our counterparts in emerging markets, say China, India, 95% or at least 95% of the economy is driven through SMEs. Africa is not going to be any different. So what we need to understand is, as people urbanize, and the urbanizing trend is continuing unabated, as people urbanize, they're going to need some basic things like bricks to build a house, electrification, building roads. So a lot of these things will require really essentially the SMEs. So when I think about all the opportunities in Africa, I'm not thinking about that one-off deal, that big corporate deal. I'm thinking about the masses of entrepreneurs that will really build this continent.
Okay, assessing African risk, because obviously there is risk in investing in Africa, and also sectors, because a lot of Africans are employed in the agricultural space, for instance, and that's where we need products, basic funding for agriculture, provident funds for those working within the agricultural space, you know, agricultural derivatives on capital markets. How are you navigating that terrain?
Well, I think you mentioned agriculture, and when you think about food security, for instance, I think for a lot of the political heads throughout the continent, food security is such an important thing. And agriculture, our knowledge of agriculture, our expertise of agriculture will come in very handy in that. So we're very keen to see how we can help develop the agricultural sophistication throughout the continent. I mean, you know that there's a lot of small little farmers in a little piece of land. What we're trying to do is ensure that we can build that capability from the ground up, if I can put it that way, and build a groundswell of able agrarian farmers.
Besides agriculture, where else would Absa want to be lending its SME support?
Well, I think, I mean, there's no doubt that Africa, we're rich in minerals, but the next phase for us is not just extraction, is you know, making sure that we can turn a piece of rock into jewelry that you would put on. So beneficiation is also going to be very important going forward. So we will look at opportunities where we can lend a hand.